Okay, so for our key topics, we have network market actors and players. So, who are involved in this ecosystem. So, next is Open Run interoperability. Number three is Open Run challenges and solutions. And number four is opportunities for ECE IT co-ECE graduates driven by this 5G run and Open Run. Okay, so let's start with our network market actors and players. So for network market, we have the UN mobile phone companies. So these are the producers of the consumer equipment. So these are your brands like Apple, Samsung, Xiaomi, Nokia, of course, uh, ZTE, Huawei, and other brands, other popular brands, and all of user equipments which connects to the network. So aside from that, we have our modems at home, and we have our beacons, and we have our IoT devices. So these are categorized as part of the UE or user equipment. And then we have our equipment or hardware manufacturers. They are the hardware providers who produces the equipments that we have. So, like for example, you have an Apple, but Apple is in contract with Paxcon to produce this mobile phone. So they do the design, and then the manufacturing was done by Paxcon. We have Broadcom, we have uh, uh, Texas Instruments, and a lot of manufacturers. And then operators, we have telco operators who provide network services to consumers. So uh, they're the Smarts, the Globe, Dito. Here in US, it's AT&T, Verizon, um, T-Mobile, and other operators, too many to mention. And then the vendors, the software and hardware services and equipment vendors to operators. So which are Nokia, Samsung, we have Huawei, Mavenir, um, and others. And then the subcontractors. The subcontractors are the ones who provide services on behalf of operators and vendors. And also sometimes they do the integration part. So these are the companies who like working with either the operators or vendors to provide services. So like the integration or the installation of the equipment or services like providing support for issues found on customers. Okay, so since we have our network target actors and players, let's move to mobile station vendors market share worldwide by from 2019 to 2022. So this is from Statista.com. So this is the latest that I found when I searched the net. So we have 2023 and 2024. I don't have the data yet, so it's not yet available for public consumption. So we have, as you notice here, we have Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, Samsung City, and others. And if you would notice, the big players are um, getting the largest market share. So this is effect of right now with the current RAN architecture and RAN model. So everything is proprietary. So if you are an operator, you have a vendor, and then the vendor provides end-to-end hardware, software, and then services from your RUDU CU. Okay, so this is something that Open RAN would like to change, or uh, this evolution of radio access technology would make some changes and maybe some improvements, or maybe some cost reduction in terms of the hardware, the services, and also end users like us could benefit from this because of this because of this open run, because of this open technology. We have more vendors, and because of competition, maybe the price would be reduced, and the cost passed to the customers would be reduced also. Rather than we only have few players who have the market share. Well, anyway, before we move to Open Run, we should discuss first our base technology, which is 5G. This is where we at right now. So right now, of course, there's already start of development of 6G, but in terms of deployments and current technology that we use and which is available to us, it's 5G. So for mobile networks, 5G technology is one of the key enabler for AI, ML, IoT, smart cities, and transformation of industries. So if we talk about 5G, so right now, most likely all of us here had experienced the higher bandwidth compared to 4G. So aside from higher bandwidth, we would have ultra reliable, low latency communication in 5G, and this would bring about the development of course, our IoTs, our AI, our machine learning, e-commerce, smart cities. Uh, so um, so this is the enabler. So this is the one who would power these technologies, because of course, as we know, if we would like have a smart cities, all of this equipments, all of these appliances in your home would have some sensors, would have some chips, would have some hardware and network connectivity that would uh, communicate and would send data back and forth to a central server to like send data to control. So like for example in autonomous in terms of transportation, what we are going in the future is the autonomous driving cars. So of course we could add a lot of sensors, a million of sensors in your car, but having it connected through to the network could also benefit us in terms of like you would know the distance and you can control the traffic light since it's connected to a central server, so you would know everything, you can control everything, and if in case some sensors fail, you are still sending your location. So this would minimize accidents. Yeah, so cars are already intelligent and connected to the network. So these are some things that might happen in the future. But right now, we are not there yet. So this technology, in terms of 5G, is ahead of time. So maybe if you are following the uh, capex and the spendings of the operators in terms of the deployment, they are slowing down because it depends on the market demand. So there are several uh, locations where these technologies are started, but there are some locations which is far away from these technologies and won't need this yet. Yeah, so like for example, if you're living in a barrio, so what you have to do, you don't need the autonomous cars, you don't need VR, and like you don't use much of the chat GPT that would need high computing power and also low latency and high uh, quick communication between network elements to get the output that we would need in the short period of time. Okay. So yeah, I'm talking too much about 5G. So I just want to show you the 3GPP specifications in link, which if you're in case you're interested to learn about this technology, everything is available. The releases it can be downloaded here. So like for example, 3GPP, it just the latest releases. So like for example, right now we're at release 19, but when I'm in R&D, I think the last uh, release that I've known was release 15. So just download this series, download this zip file, and then uh, you have this specification. So all the specifications are uh, downloadable to the public, but of course, in terms of implementation, you need to understand and decode this specification. So, like in an R&D environment, usually architects would have this first. They need to decode, decipher everything on the architecture part, the computations, and how messages are decoded and encapsulated. And then later on, it would break down until you go into the feature and the codes that you would implement. So yeah, but if you would be interested to learn more about mm, the specifications, you have it here. And if the specifications are quite complicated, there are a lot of resources, available resources online who could give an more not so complex explanation that would be better than reading the 3GPP specifications. So like example, you want to learn about beamforming. So most of things that was written here are also based from the specifications with some illustrations that you could understand more. So if you want to dig in and learn more, and then here the protocol stack. So this is important in terms of development of the technology. So if you are working with 4G, 5G, 3G, and you would work with 6G, so it's important to understand about the protocol stack. So like for example, in your UE, in your Gnode B, so this is the Node B part, the RUDU part. So you have the Pi layer, MAC layer, RLC, PDCP, RRC, and NAS for UE. So there's a parallel development between UE. So on the cell phone side, there are R&D developers, there are equipment manufacturers who does everything, who interprets the 3GPP, put it in source code, and then put it into flash it into the hardware, and then you have the equipments. And same with the Gnode B. So the equipments that you have on your cell site tower going to the DU, the box under the tower. So there are some codes there which is composed of this physical MAC RLC PDCP. And yeah, and there are some splits. There's non-real time and real time. So you could learn about that, and then if you're into integration, and you would want to uh, see the message flow between these equipments, you could always visit Event Helix. So like for example, for 5GNR standalone access. So this standalone access is more of like when you open your cell phone and you would connect to the tower. So what are the messages being exchanged for you to for the network to verify that you have a subscription, you're a subscriber of Smart, and you have these services. So this is a registration procedure. So you would see here the messages from user equipment from your cell phone to your um, Node B from your RUNDU. Okay, and then going to your core network. So you can see the exchange of messages here. So actually, network programming is more of the request, response, snack, ACK. So back and forth in the messages and timers, of course, because you have messages going back and forth here. Okay, so you could check this here. And if you are part of the R&D and you're into development and integration, this is important because uh, if there's already a code, it's already flashed on the hardware, and then you are already testing the implementation to verify that it's working, you should have this as a guide, and then you snip on the Wireshark capture, and you see if the messages are received and receive on time, or there's a timeout or there's an error. So we could use this as guide. Okay. So I hope that's it for 5G. Let's Okay. So to our main topic, so which is Open RAN and interoperability. So Open RAN will not replace the 5G technology. So it's part of the evolution of the technology, which would just open the interfaces between network elements on your radio access networks. Okay. And when we say Open RAN, it's not same with uh, the open source wherein we see the source code. So it's just the open interfaces. So you have the specification available to you created by Open RAN, the ORAN organization, and you have the specifications from 3GPP, and then you interpret and implement this specification that has RU, DU, CU that could be interconnected even though you're using a multi-vendor, multi-manufacturer, and different softwares. So Open RAN, in a nutshell, is about disaggregating software from hardware and having an open interfaces to allow vendor interoperability on RAN deployments. Okay, so it's just like this front hole. So, for example, you have your RU was vendor A, for example, Huawei, and your DU is Ericsson. It will interwork if you would connect the RU equipment to the DU. So it won't have a problem. It won't have an error. So right now in current setting, so like what I said before, so it's single vendor end to end. So if you would interconnect different vendors, it won't work. And like even SFPs, the uh, what's the other word for SFPs? The Anyway, I forgot that the SFPs, the QSFPs, transceivers, yeah, even transceivers are like would work only for a certain vendor. If you would use another transceiver from other vendor with different product number, it won't work. So with this open RAN technology, we should realize interconnectivity between different vendors. Okay, so for specifications, we have oral specifications. You can download the specifications here. So like for example, this one. Mm, Where's the front tool? Anyway, to save time, I'll just look for the file here. Okay, you can have this specification. So for example, I think this is for the front hole, and then yeah, you will see how it would communicate the formulas, how these messages are exchanged between UE, DU, CU. Okay, you can check it here. Okay, so also there articles available on web, and I put in here our reference in uh, Nokia. So in a nutshell, to make it more simpler, so it was like before, right? The personal computer was personal computer industry was dominated by IBM, and you cannot like just go in, like for example in the Philippines, you just not cannot go in Gilmore and buy motherboard, buy video card, and then put it in your IBM computer. It won't work, right? So it's just a way. Right now, the technology is just a way for us to have like that type of uh, freedom to the operators to have the type of freedom to interconnect uh, different components, network components produced by different manufacturers, and also, of course, the disaggregation between software and hardware, wherein, like, for example, in your CU, you cannot just like go into a single vendor. So you could install their cloud management software, which could act as your CU. So, yeah, it's like having you could have your personal computer assembled based on your liking, based on the brand that you would like, and interconnect all together, and still would work as you would want based on your specifications. Okay, so that's the simpler way. But this is a series of training, so please attend those trainings so you can have the more in-depth explanations between those components and how it would interconnect, and how would it work. Okay. Okay, so this is just to show you the difference between traditional run, the virtual run, and the open run. So if you would just notice, the main difference is in terms of the interfaces. The front hole EasyPry is open, and the mid hole is open. And also, the purpose of this slide is just to show you the equipment that we are sample of equipment that we are deploying uh, in radio access network. So here's your antenna, and then you have your radio unit, and then on if you have your tower, beside the tower, there's a box there, or there's a room there, you would see the distributed unit. So this is like a blade with, so here are your antennas. So these are the ones you see on top of the telco towers, and then another sample, your base stations. This is your DU. This is the one connected in your RU. So the antennas have a ECPRI cable. So usually QSFP fiber optic. You would connect it here on this part, and then this part you would have also SFP, and this is the one going to your CU. Okay, so these are blades. You could just, this is a hot swap. Okay, yeah, so those are the network elements that you would see. Okay, and your CU equipment. So basically, CU equipments are just like computers. So this is the ones you would see on cabinets. So like sample Nokia. Okay, data centers like this one. So you have your blades there. So this is serving as your CU, and then the blades that were deployed there are airplane. Mhm. Sample. Yeah, so something like this. So you would have your hard disk here, and then on the back side, so that is where you connect your SFPs to interconnect. Okay. So there are control units and compute units if you're familiar with uh, the CU. Okay. So here are your equipments, and in terms of front hole, so these are your functional description. You have your control plane, user plane, synchronization plane, management plane. So control plane are those Open RAN front hole packets, scheduling commands for downlink and uplink data transfers. User plane is the DL and UL IQ data. So this is your messages, your exact messages from UE to the RAN being interpreted by RU and DU. And then your synchronization plane, which handles timing and synchronization data. So this is an important part in terms of communications between network elements, but because you should have this equipment with uh, they should be synchronized. Okay, so we had a lot of issues found during integration that yeah, the message or drop or the message or uh, the message timeout or the message didn't receive. So that's because of synchronization. So just a bit of delay may cause loss of data. So there's a synchronization plane, and then management plane is the static configuration provided. So this is the management messages exchange between the DU and RU. Okay, so some drivers and factors why operators are looking into Open RAN deployments. So basically, number one is the capex and opex reduction. But right now, this is a big question mark in terms of the operators. If you talk someone from Smart Globe, Tito, so maybe the common question is, give me the numbers. So where is the reduction? So most of the operators are uh, in, I would say, wait and see mode, or in testing phase, or checking or testing this Open RAN and uh, verifying if indeed there's a open capex and opex reduction. So, but of course, in a nutshell, in a bigger picture, if you would just search in the net, you would see that more vendors, competition will drive software and hardware, and then services lower. Well, anyway, in terms of what we see right now, in terms of the vendors, so it's not right now we have uh, additional vendors who are involved in Open RAN, and this is brought about by this technology. So there are some manufacturers and vendors who are now focusing in this Open RAN and like marketing their equipments with lower uh, value or lower price. Yeah. And the next, supply chain issues brought about by events. So like for example, we have pandemic, we have chip shortage. Operators has other options as they are not locked into a specific vendor. They can choose other suppliers that has better time to market, deployment, and has buffer stock. Disaggregating hardware software might result to birth of companies which develop front component, and it does not need to be an end-to-end company. So not like right now that the bigger vendors have end-to-end product offering. So if you're uh, a small investor who would want to dip your hands in this technology, if you want to focus on just CU software, DU software, RU software, you could do that. And if you could like just want to produce the hardware, you could do that because software and hardware are disaggregated. And then operators would have an option. So like in case there's some shortage of supply, they could like uh, broadcast to everyone that we are in need of this radio, this antenna with these specifications, and then more suppliers would come, and then of course they would have more bargaining power in terms of negotiating the price because they have option A, option B, option C. Unlike when there's a shortage wherein we only have few vendors, we are like uh, competing with the supply that they would have. And in terms of production, their capacity on how they could produce the hardware. Okay. So next is a geopolitical situation wherein some regulators may be banning the product due to security issues. So operators can just easily switch with different technologies and different equipments and different vendors. Okay, so like for example, if a certain country would say that we don't like this products or hardware produced by this uh, country because it poses security to our country. So they could they could just change it in a shorter period of time, or they are not locked into if there's certain time limit to do the migration. They are not locked in, so they could move better, move faster. And then last is use cases. Use case drives implementation and adaptation of technology. So of course, use cases would drive adaptation of this technology. So uh, usually the use cases drives demand for deployments. So like what I said earlier, why would I deploy 5G in a certain barrio which is uh, had enough bandwidth speed with LTE-A? Okay, so why would I deploy 5G in a place wherein the people just do text messages because they don't need to watch some videos? So yeah, just an example. Okay, and last one, leading vendors are also invested in this technology and evolving to adapt openness in network. So even those biggest vendors that controls the market share right now are involved in this open run technology. So that means it's something which we cannot uh, like ignore, and this will happen maybe soon or maybe later. But this will happen since everyone is riding on the boat and with the same vision to have network network hardware and software disaggregated. Okay. So topic 3 is about Open RAN interoperability, challenges, and solutions. So we have now Open RAN and we know that it's interoperability. So it brought a lot of complexity or challenges since multi-vendor approach introduces some uh, complexities in terms of testing, integration, deployment, support, and maintenance. So right now, the model is quite easy, quite simple and not complex. So if I'm an operator, I would talk to vendors and give my specifications, give my anything that I would want, and the the timeline wherein I would need to deploy the network equipments and the place. Is it greenfield, brownfield, or everything that you could like provide to the vendors. Okay. And then they do pre-integration on their side, the vendors. So of course, making sure that this product meets what the operator needs, and then They would do some proof of concept demonstration, making sure that everything the operator asks, the bandwidth, the technologies, that the features, the releases are in there and it's working. So they would show it to the operators. And then next is to deploy. Okay, so the deployment is handled by the vendor because all of those equipments are owned or proprietary and owned by them. So then we move on to support. So it's also the vendor who would do the support and maintenance or do a subcontracting to do the support and maintenance. But with the multi-vendor approach, so who would do the integration testing? Who will make sure that there would be uh, no glitches, error, or even the corner cases are covered in terms of testing, in terms of deployment and everything. Okay, so those are the biggest challenges that currently we would face in terms of deployment because of course this is new technology, new way of doing things. So uh, we normally we would encounter what we call birth pains. So in R&D and also in integration and in deployment, we call it birth pains. Usually there are some problems, but with Open Run, maybe there are more problems or more complex problems which will arise. And another thing is in terms of fixing and in terms of like communication between vendors, will vendor A and vendor B would agree uh, if in terms of like for example when I'm working at R&D, uh, I'm in Packet Core group and we're connecting with the MME. So MME contains the data of subscribers. So whenever there's an issue, there's a back and forth messages like uh, the problem is in your domain because based on my investigation, blah 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 blah, yada yada yada, and then he would come back. No, based on my investigation, based on the logs, yada yada yada, based on the Wireshark capture, this is the problem. So there are a lot of uh, healthy discussions. So this is happening between single vendor, but with multi-vendor, it maybe the discussions may be more intense or the investigations be more longer because the other equipment is a black box. You would just know your equipment and also you know the interfaces are open and you comply with these interfaces and you assume that when it's connected with the other side, it would communicate the way you envision it. But yeah, of course, in the real world, there's always a problem. Okay, so here's uh, just a simple uh, example in terms of Open Run multi-vendor integration. So what would be the challenges if you would do a multi-vendor integration? So you should have prior to like if I'm an operator prior to deployment, we must make sure that we have defined the versions. So it should be aligned and transparent to all uh, vendors. So what's the ORAN version? What's the 3GPP versions? What are the all the releases versions? It should be aligned because if A and B release versions are not aligned, of course the implementations, the code level part of there may have a problem. Okay. ORAN profile managements. What are the bands, subcarrier, architecture, transport, configurations, bandwidth profile, etc. So these are the things that also must be defined before doing the integration. And then next is end-to-end testing. So since you have multi-vendor approach, it's not that you would just like uh, if I would buy from vendor A the RU, but the DU and the CU is from vendor B, I would just do the integration between RU and DU. No, it should be end-to-end testing. So multi-vendor interoperability testing should cover end-to-end, involving RU, DU, CU up to the end user. So let's make sure that um, the intended message should be received from point A to point B, from all the network equipments up to the user. So it's yeah, it would be part of the challenge. Okay. So last one is equipment vendor swap should be simulated and tested. So hardware failure scenario, which with the with the which requires equipment swap. So these scenarios are like uh, real deployment scenarios wherein we encounter in field deployment, wherein, for example, a vendor A, the antenna of vendor A failed, and then we have available antenna from vendor B. So we could just easily hot swap these equipments and it would work. So it should be part of the testing. Okay, so it's not just you do the end-to-end testing, but failure scenarios should be also included on this integration testing. So, so here are the challenges. So since we have challenges, we have some solutions that may help in terms of solving these complexities and problems. So we could have simulators, automations, predictive AI, the intelligent controllers, multi-vendor integration experts, interworking policy between vendors on support and maintenance. Okay. So since we have birth pains, as we move along, we learn and we adapt and we produce certain solutions that could less complicate the problems. So like on early part of development, since the the other side is a black box, you could use simulators to at least test it first, just to be sure that with this release, with this specifications, if my RU would be connected to DU. So since you could simulate, okay, the exchange of messages, so at least you can minimize the problems, or you could automate the deployment part, because part of the complexity and the common problems in terms of deployment and integration is the installation and configuration of network equipments. But if you could automate and pre-test the interconnection between those network elements with a certain specific uh, tailor-made tested configurations, which could be automated in terms of deployment, that would solve the problem. And also predictive AI, since all of these network equipments have logs. You have logs, you have histories, you have alarms. Using predictive AI, you could catch all in database and then create an algorithm to prevent issues happening beforehand. So with this data, so like in history, you see that if there are a lot of, for example, if there are a lot of high temperature pan alarms on this network equipments, the next failure would be network isolation. So beforehand, if you would seeing that there are two network elements which are reporting these alarms, you could alert, or you could just do some adjustments. You could like automate a script to uh, adjust the settings of these machines to lower the temperature or anything that you would want to do. And intelligent controllers. So intelligent controllers would be the central hub for this network equipments. Intelligent controller should be intelligent enough to know or to pinpoint in which network node or network element has the issue or has the problem. Okay. So not pinpointing exactly uh, on up to the line of code, but at least up to the network element. Okay, so vendor A and vendor B will need to have a finger pointing to to identify the issue and to agree. Okay, so there should be some intelligence in your controller. And then of course the development of multi-vendor integration experts. So right now, so like for example, I'm working in Nokia. If you would ask me to integrate our equipment with other vendors, most likely I can I can make that end-to-end solution work because I didn't know how to configure it, and they have different uh, command line uh, different commands. They use different commands and they have different configurations, etc. But with these open run solutions, they should have we should have multi-vendor integration experts and also some third-party integration experts who is like who should be neutral on neutral grounds because of course if you were integrating and you're from vendor A, you would be more biased and may point the finger more on vendor B. Okay. And maybe operators could have this multi-vendor integration expert, but that would entail more cost, which is uh, counter that would counter the capex opex, which is uh, being presented as benefit of Open Run. And then interworking policy between vendors on support and maintenance. So this is the most important part on my point of view. So if operators would want to deploy Open Run and would want to deploy multi-vendor approach, make sure that before signing the contract and committing to deploy this, make sure that there's a common understanding and clear black and white responsibilities between vendors in terms of support and maintenance. Okay, so clearly SLA are discussed, the roles and responsibilities are discussed. So we won't have lots of complications and problems and lots of silos in terms of communication. Okay, so those are the solutions that we could think of in terms of these complexities that is part of the Open Run technology. So since we have the challenge and we have the solutions, where are we and where are we on this part and what are the opportunities for ECE, IT, OE, CE graduate students, instructors driven by 5G Run and Open Run. Okay, more complexities, more jobs, more companies, more jobs. Okay, so this would benefit the professionals such as the audience of these trainings. Okay. Okay, so what's in it for us? Why we are here, aside from CPD points of those ECE graduates? So to keep us updated, so it's good to know what's ahead of us rather than stay behind. So there are a lot of opportunities. Open Run is a new technology. New technology introduces some complexities, and every problem has a solution that gives us opportunities and gives us challenges to prove that we are good, and yeah, we are worth of the dollars and pesos that the companies are paying us. Okay. So specifically in terms of technology deployment, so on specifications, more software, hardware architects are needed. Solutions architect, those technologies who would interpret this specifications. So you have right now you have the 3GPP specifications, and then you have this ORAN specifications. So more complexity, more specifications, more opportunities. Okay. In development, software, hardware development, product owners, project managers, scrum masters, team leads. Okay, so on R&D part, so of course you have the specifications, you would translate it into code. So from specifications, it would be uh, like chopped down into features, and then from features to sub features. From features, it would be user stories if you're working on a Scrum, and then from user stories to the specific engineer who would work on the code, and then from the development, you have your Scrum masters who make sure that you met the deadline. Okay, and then make sure that everything works. Okay. So next is when you have your software and hardware, you have your testing and integration. So you have integrator wherein you would integrate your hardware and software. You would test the software. You would automate and do releases. So release engineering. So this is a continuous integration, CI and DevOps on companies. Okay, so we would have integrator, software tester, release manager, etc. So technologies there, the specific languages that you would learn is C, C++, Java, Python for automation, for CI DevOps, Kubernetes, Rancher, uh, Jenkins, Robot Framework. Okay, so yeah, those are the things that you would need to learn. Actually, if you are a student, just one subject, just one programming language just is a job for you. But I would suggest not to uh, like it's good to be a master of something, but we should be tech agnostic and not to limit ourselves in a certain language or certain technologies. So like uh, um, I'm a IT graduate. I should not be knowing about hardware. I should be not. I should not be reading about architecture. So try to adapt, learn, and try to learn something new every time. So there are a lot of opportunities. It's up to you how to develop yourself. And outside your software and hardware, you're already in the top deployment. You have pre-sales, you have sales, account managers, tech experts, you have network engineers, technical team, which will do the demo POCs, and you have uh, other jobs which entails work for pre-sales team, and then post-sales after selling the product, you agreed with the contract. So you would have the project manager who would see to it that everything is working fine. You have technical experts who would be the go-to guy whenever there's a problem on the product. You have your network engineers if there's a downtime, if there's a certain network isolations, and you have the integration deployment experts if vendor A and vendor B suddenly stop sending messages. So there are integration and deployment experts who could do this. Uh, then last is support and maintenance. So this team is composed of network or experts also who could provide the technical support. So this is based on what the customer or the operator would see on field deployment and actual use. So no product is perfect. So every time we do codes or we produce hardware and software in R&D, we make sure that we release it with uh, uh, we call it hero bags, ideally. Okay, but when it's used in the field, you realize that there are some corner cases and there are certain scenarios you didn't cover. So basically, uh, it's continuous development and continuous uh, like improvement. So most of those improvements, big improvements, are from the support and maintenance, what we see on the field, because it is where you see the common problems which are not seen whenever you run it on machines on your automation.